Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Depths of Fear. You play the role of Theseus as you venture down into the labyrinth and hope to slay the Minotaur, using the sword embedded in the stone. Of course, it's not that simple. The sword is embedded within the stone, and to release the sword from the stone, you must retrieve several medallions. These medallions are guarded by several monsters throughout the labyrinth, each one having their own dungeon of sorts. The game starts you off in a hub where you can buy weapons, and eventually enter the dungeons of the monsters you hope to slay. Upon entering a dungeon, you're kind of locked into it until you either complete it, returning with a medallion to the hub, or die in the process. There are two forms of currency of sorts. One is gold, which is your traditional gold coins and picking up anything made of gold, gold balls and such. And the second is knowledge, where you pick up these books and it gives you knowledge points. These points can be spent at altars to grant you temporary one-time use powers. Picking up a book also brings up a brief snippet of information on your screen, and these can be referenced again back at the hub. And that's quite a nice touch. It helps cement the setting a bit more. Interestingly, every time you enter a dungeon, it is completely randomized. Procedural generation is something that's kind of hit or miss, and it can lead to environments, objects, creatures, or items looking a bit samey after a while, depending on how well it's done. In Depths of Fear, the level, the item placements, and enemy placements are randomized, and it leads to a fresh experience every time, especially considering the type of game it is. Now, one of the quirks of procedural generation is that you can have some odd environments depending on how well it's actually done, and you can have certain cases where you can never actually reach the exit or can't reach an item you need or things like that, and I have to say that's never happened in Depths of Fear, and that's quite a good thing because it's definitely happened to me in a number of other games and it is really annoying. To give you guys a fresh experience, I've restarted my game, and this is the first dungeon with the satyr, and he walks around each level holding his torch and he illuminates areas in this dark dungeon, and of course if he finds you he will hunt you down. To counter this you have to play quite stealthily, hide in the shadows, try not to break too many things to avoid attracting him, hide in closets, that sort of thing. And while I've been told you can kill him, he won't truly die, he'll just respawn until you finally get down to the third floor, which is an arena for every dungeon, and you grab his medallion which depowers him, meaning you can finally kill him. There are static enemies within each level, and they're not too big of a problem to deal with, at least within this dungeon. Some of the other ones are quite annoying to deal with, to say the least. Now, randomly spaced throughout these levels are the exit, which is locked. You need the key, which is also randomly placed. Loads of traps, enemies, sometimes if you're lucky weapons, gold books which give you knowledge points which you can trade in at altars for one-time use spells. You can even find items. One of the really useful items I found was a ball of twine. What it does is it essentially just leaves a line behind you, and this line is visible in the dark. If you get spotted and you have to put out your light so you're hidden, if you can't see, the enemy will kill you because he has a torch and he can find you anyway. However, if you put out your light and just sprint along the line, finding a way back along the path to the ground, you will eventually get away, so it's a very useful item to find. You can even find potions, and potions are quite interesting. They are unlabeled the first time you pick them up. If you drink a potion, all potions of that type are then labeled for you. For example, if you drink a potion with a question mark and it heals you, from then on out potions of that type will be labeled as a healing potion, so you know what it does. There are numerous effects, night vision being one of the really helpful ones, but there can also be loads of negative effects. One of them is really odd. One of them I came across anyway. I think it knocks you out. What it does is essentially just blacks out your screen for a while, and then you sort of fade in after a bit. And I don't see the purpose of that. It doesn't have any gameplay benefit. For example, another negative potion would be the poison potion. Obviously, it just damages your health and forces you to play a bit more cautiously. From then on out, it sort of pushes the gameplay forward a bit and adds a bit more tension, whereas the potion that knocks you out, I have no idea why that's in there other than just to pause the game for a bit. It's worth mentioning that the way the keys are placed around the levels is really well done. They could just be lying there, for example, or They could be in these little mini dungeons which could contain anything from a jumping puzzle surrounded by lava or guarded by a number of enemies, or even in one of the later dungeons where it's in the mouth of a multi-headed beast and you have to cut off all the heads and eventually you get the key to progress on further. And I think that's really well done. As you've seen, the game doesn't look particularly great. You could argue that it's gone a bit old school with its style, but that's a fact, that's not a merit or an issue. What the game excels in, however, is atmosphere, and it does a hell of a job of making you feel like you're on the run when something's chasing down on you, or the feeling of being lost and in the dark and surrounded by enemies, and it does that really well. Really great, you could argue. While this version of the game is quite a bit better than the version I got, I believe it was pre-release, I still think it's a bit unpolished on a number of features. For example, the combat is really simple and can be a bit odd at times. You have an attack on a cooldown, that's all you can do, you can just strike. So what you do is you step forward, attack, and then step back to avoid the counter attack. And you just rinse and repeat that when fighting smaller enemies. The larger enemies, the bosses, usually have a special attack which you have to avoid. Another example of this game being a bit unpolished would be during the Satyr boss fight. During the boss fight, the room fills with lava, and of course, trying to save myself from being burnt alive as you do, I stood on this ledge and the room filled with lava, and getting off the ledge after the lava dissipated, I found out that the Satyr had been killed almost instantly. I quite enjoyed the Satyr levels, so I played it again, and it's worth noting that there's no way to replay a level. You have to restart your game, losing all your progress every time. And the number of times that I did play the Satyr level, the majority of those times he got killed by the lava rather than me actually having to do anything, and that's really underwhelming. Another example of it being unpolished would be you can pick up items and interact with things when you're nowhere near them. From half a room away you can pick up a potion and use it, and it just seems odd. I didn't get to play the game for as long as I'd like to, and of course this video is my impressions of that time so far. I enjoyed the game far more than I expected to, and I have to say most of that is due to the atmosphere. The developers have got that down, and a few quality of life changes would make this game incredible. I hope I gave you guys a nice idea of what the game's about. Apologies for the long video. I put this game off for quite a while, so I wanted to make sure I covered it properly. Anyway guys, see you around next time.